Hello, and welcome to TerraNash. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll tell you a story about a young dreamer named Solara, who follows a mysterious whisper in the night sky and discovers a portal to a far-off galaxy, a place where stardust beings drift through glowing forests and the secrets of the stars gently unfold. It's a story of peace, connection, and finding light within the quiet corners of the universe. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from, and what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon for early access to all our stories, and a curated Spotify playlist as well. And if you've been enjoying our bedtime stories, subscribing is a simple and free way to support us. Your support means the world to us, and together we can make TerraNash an even more peaceful place for storytelling. Now, gently close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Allow your breath to slow and deepen. You're safe here, and the night is still. Let the soft sound of the stars guide you as we begin our journey across the galaxy, toward a portal of dreams, where a gentle adventure is waiting just for you. High on a quiet hill, where the grass swayed like lullabies and the wind carried secrets from the sky, lived a girl named Solara. Her world was small, just a scattering of cottages, a sleepy garden, and her grandmother's old observatory at the edge of the village. But her dreams stretched wider than the stars. Solara loved the night. She said the stars told stories when no one else would listen. Most evenings, after the world had dimmed and the owls began their gentle calls, she would carry her journal and telescope, an odd little thing she'd built from scraps of metal and dusty lenses, and climb to the hilltop. There, she'd lie back, pencil in hand, and trace the sky's shifting patterns. That night, however, something was different. The sky was unusually clear, the kind of deep velvet black that made every constellation shine with quiet purpose. Solara adjusted the focus on her telescope and peered through. And as she did, the wind stilled. The air grew soft and heavy, like the breath before a lullaby. Then, faintly, she heard it. A whisper, so soft it could have been the breeze, and yet too precise to be anything but a voice. 47, 223, Lunessa. She froze. She glanced around, half expecting to see someone crouched behind the tall grass. But there was no one. Only the moon and the stars and the sound of her heart tapping gently in her chest. Solara scribbled down the numbers. Coordinates? They didn't match anything she'd seen on her star charts. She whispered them aloud, and as she did, the telescope trembled just slightly before its lens shimmered with a strange silvery light. Lunessa, she repeated softly. The name rang through her like a chime. She stood, brushing off her notebook, and turned her gaze to the sky. Far above, one star pulsed brighter than the rest, just once, and then stilled, as if winking at her from across the galaxy. Solara didn't understand what she'd heard or seen, but she felt it, deeply, like the very beginning of something long forgotten and long awaited. She stayed on the hill for a long time that night, the breeze gently curling around her like a blanket. When she finally descended, she cradled her journal to her chest and whispered to herself, "The stars are trying to tell me something." And somewhere, far beyond the sky, something listened. The next morning, soft golden light filtered through Solara's window, casting gentle patterns across her floor. But she barely noticed. Her thoughts were still adrift in the stars, circling that whispered name, Lunessa, and the strange shimmer in her telescope's lens. The coordinates she'd written down felt etched into her very skin. After a quiet breakfast, Solara wandered into the attic of her grandmother's old observatory. It was a place full of forgotten notebooks, faded star maps, and curious little trinkets that had once charted the heavens. The air smelled like old paper and lavender. Dust danced in the morning sun like drifting constellations. She opened drawers, sifted through rolled parchments, and followed nothing but a gentle pull in her chest. Then she found it. An old leather-bound book, tucked between two shelves of forgotten almanacs. It was heavy, warm to the touch, and bound with a silver thread that glinted even in the dim attic light. She carefully untied it and opened to the first page. There, drawn in delicate glowing ink, was a map unlike any she had ever seen. It was not a map of her night sky, not exactly. The constellations were twisted, rearranged, and surrounded by softly swirling lights. And in the bottom corner, in looping handwriting that looked like it belonged to her grandmother, was a word. Lunessa. Solara's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she traced the curves of the name. As she followed a trail of glowing dots, stars, maybe, or something more, they began to light faintly beneath her touch, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The coordinates she'd heard matched a single point on the map, one nestled between two bright star clusters shaped like wings. When she whispered the numbers aloud once more, the ink on the map shimmered brighter, and suddenly, just for a moment, the air around her shifted. A soft wind, though no window was open, a ringing tone, like a lullaby played on the edge of sleep. And then, flickering above the map like a mirage, came the outline of a portal. It hovered in midair, delicate and silver blue. like the edge of a dream barely remembered. It faded after a heartbeat, leaving behind only stillness and the racing of her heart. Solara stood there for a long moment, her hands resting gently on the glowing page. Her grandmother had always told her the stars held more than stories. They held pathways, doors, and perhaps destinations. "I think you wanted me to find this," Solara whispered to the quiet attic, unsure if she was speaking to the stars or to the memory of the woman who once called them friends. She rolled the glowing map carefully and tucked it into her satchel. Tonight, she would return to the hill, but this time, she wouldn't be stargazing. She would be listening. That evening, the sky blushed in hues of lavender and rose as twilight slowly unfurled its wings. Solara stood at the top of the hill, the same hill where the stars had first whispered to her. But tonight, she wasn't here to gaze. She was here to follow. She knelt in the grass and unrolled the glowing map of glimmers, placing it gently in front of her. The silver ink gleamed faintly, even in the dying light, and the stars above began to blink into being, one by one, as if they recognized what she held. The same coordinates pulsed on the map, guiding her to that single glowing point. Solara took a breath, quiet and slow, and whispered once more. 47, 223, Lunessa. The wind stilled. Even the crickets seemed to pause. And then, just above the hill's curve, the air began to ripple. It was like watching the surface of a still pond touched by moonlight. Soft, swirling patterns of light, bending in impossible shapes. The portal unfolded soundlessly, a vertical oval of shimmering stardust edged in pale silver light. It hummed not with sound, but with a gentle pressure, like a dream pressing at the edge of wakefulness. Solara's heart pounded, not with fear, but with wonder. She stepped closer, feeling warmth radiating from its center, like sunlight filtered through water. For a moment, she hesitated, not because she was afraid of what was beyond, but because the moment felt sacred. A goodbye and a beginning, all at once. She clutched her satchel to her chest, took one final look at the village nestled below, and whispered, "I'll be back." Then, with the stars above watching and the breeze wrapping her like a shawl, Solara stepped into the light. The feeling was unlike anything she had ever known. There was no sound, no up or down, only drifting softness, like floating through a sea of velvet and stardust. Shapes flickered past her in glimmers of gold and indigo. She saw fragments of worlds, oceans that stretched into mist, skies with twin moons, and forests that pulsed like breathing lanterns. Time folded in on itself, stretching and shrinking and spinning around her. Yet Solara felt perfectly still, perfectly held. And then, she arrived. Her feet touched solid ground, though it felt feather light. The air smelled of cool blossoms and distant rain. Above her stretched a sky of soft plum and silver, painted with glowing constellations she didn't recognize. The ground beneath her shimmered faintly, as if threaded with stars. Trees arched above her in delicate, translucent canopies, their leaves softly ringing like chimes in a breeze she couldn't feel. This wasn't Earth. This was Lunessa. Solara pressed her hand gently to her heart. It beat steady and calm. "I'm here," she whispered, her voice almost reverent. And far off, deeper within the silver forest, something heard her, something kind and old and waiting. Solara stepped forward slowly, each footfall soundless against the softly glowing ground. The world of Lunessa surrounded her in a hush, like a library of dreams. Everything shimmered faintly, not with brightness, but with a quiet light, gentle, like moonbeams caught in dew. The trees were tall and slender, their bark smooth and silver grey. Their leaves were translucent and pale blue, swaying ever so slightly, as if stirred by a lullaby only they could hear. Soft lights drifted lazily through the air, tiny creatures perhaps, or fragments of stardust with wings. As she wandered deeper, a soft mist curled around her ankles, cool but not cold, and the air was rich with the scent of honeyed blossoms and morning rain. It felt like walking through a memory you never knew you had. Then, from behind a tree that pulsed with soft light, a shape emerged. He was tall and robed in colors that shimmered like the sky before dawn. Blues, silvers, and soft traces of gold. His presence was not alarming, but deeply peaceful, like the moment between heartbeats. His eyes, wide and deep, held entire galaxies, and his voice, when he spoke, came like a breeze brushing across her thoughts. "You heard the stars," he said simply. Solara nodded, still half spelled by the beauty of the place. "And they led me here." He studied her for a moment before offering a slight graceful bow. "I am Velin," he said, "keeper of the first light. And you, Solara, are not here by accident." "How do you know my name?" Velin offered the softest of smiles. "Lunessa remembers those who seek with wonder." He gestured for her to follow, and together they walked through the forest. The leaves above sparkled gently as they passed, as if nodding in greeting. They crossed a stream that sang instead of splashed, and stepped over stones etched with constellations she didn't recognize. "Lunessa," Velin explained, "is a quiet world, a place between places. It was once part of a great pathway, comet trails that connected the peaceful planets. But long ago, those paths fractured, and we were left adrift." Solara looked up at the sky, where unfamiliar stars blinked gently, serene and steady. "Why did they break?" she asked. Velin's gaze grew distant. That story is older than memory. Some say it was an accident. Others believe it was fear, a choice made to protect this place from a distant threat. But in choosing isolation, we lost something precious. The music of the galaxy faded, and so we wait. For what? Solara asked softly. Velin stopped beneath a wide, glowing tree whose branches curled like spirals of soft light. He looked at her with quiet certainty. For someone who hears the stars again. Solara felt her heart stir. She didn't fully understand what this place needed from her, but she felt it. Like the moment before waking from a dream, you're not ready to leave. A purpose, wrapped in mystery. Velin offered her a seat on a mossy stone beneath the glowing canopy. Rest now, he said. Lunessa is gentle, but the path ahead will ask for something deeper than you've ever given. Solara leaned back, gazing up at the sky that no one on Earth had ever seen. The stars here blinked slowly, rhythmically, like they were breathing. And as sleep began to cradle her, she wondered, was it possible for an entire galaxy to be lonely? And was she truly the one meant to help it remember how to sing again? When Solara woke, the forest still shimmered in hushed tones, but the sky above had shifted. The plum hues of dusk had faded into a velvet twilight streaked with soft gold. Somewhere nearby, a melodic hum echoed faintly, like the call of distant whales. Velin stood not far from her, gazing upward with quiet reverence. He turned as she stirred. You slept in the arms of Lunessa, he said with a gentle smile. The forest dreams with those it welcomes. Solara rose slowly, brushing silver petals from her hair. I feel lighter. Velin nodded. This world eases the weight we forget we carry. He led her along a new path. This one marked with delicate spirals etched into the glowing earth. As they walked, Solara noticed the gentle pulse of the land beginning to falter in places. The light dimmed beneath certain trees. The hum grew distant, scattered, uncertain. Lunessa is beautiful, she said quietly, but something feels off. Like a song with missing notes. Velin gave a long, soft sigh. There is a wound, one that never fully healed. He brought her to a high clearing, where a great stone circle sat, carved with symbols older than any she'd seen. In its center floated a suspended crystal globe, cracked but still glowing faintly from within. It hovered in silence, rotating slowly in place. This, said Velin, was the heart of the comet path. Long ago, it guided the stars' trails across the galaxy, keeping the harmony between worlds. From here, Lunessa connected to sister planets, places of peace, of music, of balance. Solara stepped closer, her reflection swirling in the fractured surface of the globe. What happened to it? No one knows for certain, Velin replied. One day the comet trails simply stopped arriving. The harmony dimmed. Some say it was the will of a guardian star who feared change. Others believe it was an act of sorrow or grief. Whatever the cause, Lunessa was sealed away. He touched the edge of the globe with a single finger. A soft pulse flared through the air, like a chime struck in deep water, then faded into silence. But the stars, they're still speaking, Solara said, feeling it now more than ever. They whispered to me. They brought me here. Velin's eyes sparkled. Then perhaps it's time to listen. Truly listen. He guided her toward the edge of the clearing, where an overlook revealed the sky in all its vastness. Comet trails, once brilliant paths across the heavens, were faint scars now, pale and broken, like old lines on parchment. There was once a constellation, Velin said, that anchored the path, a celestial map only those with a stargazer's heart could see. But over time, it faded from memory. We no longer know how to find it. Solara looked out over the broken sky, her pulse steady. She didn't have answers, not yet, but she had a feeling, a gentle tug in her chest, that she could find them. She turned back to Velin. Then let's start remembering. He bowed his head, solemn and hopeful. The stars have waited long enough. And far above them, the sky listened. One star blinked, slow, soft, and steady, as if responding to an old friend. Velin led Solara down a winding path that dipped beneath the glowing forest, into a place where the trees grew wider, older, and quieter. The light here dimmed to a silvery dusk, and the air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of stone and deep roots. The stars above disappeared behind a canopy of interwoven branches that whispered to each other in a language Solara could almost understand. At the end of the path stood a small archway made of smooth, luminous stone. Runes spiraled along its surface like vines, pulsing gently as Solara approached. "This is the hollow of memory," Velin said softly. "Few enter, fewer return changed." Solara placed her hand against the stone. It was cool and steady, as if it had been waiting for her touch. The runes flared softly beneath her fingers, and the archway opened with a sigh, revealing a chamber carved into the earth, glowing faintly from within. The walls were smooth crystal, shimmering with ancient starlight trapped long ago. In the center of the cavern, resting on a pedestal of polished obsidian, was a broken star. It was small, no larger than a lantern, but it pulsed gently, like the last ember of a fading fire. Its surface was cracked, threads of light leaking out in tender waves. Solara stepped closer. "This is what remains of the guardian star," Velin whispered. "The one who once kept Lunessa connected to the cosmic path." She stared at the broken star, her reflection glinting across its fractured edges. Why did it break? Velin's expression softened. Some say it shattered itself. Out of sorrow, out of fear. Long ago, a change came. New voices from distant worlds, waves of energy, strange pulses from galaxies yet unknown. The Guardian, once steady and luminous, grew afraid. It believed Lunessa would be swallowed by chaos. So it sealed the comet paths and silenced the flow. He looked down, quiet for a moment. In doing so, it also silenced the song of connection. Solara knelt beside the broken star. She could feel its sadness, not in words, but in the ache of it. A soft weight in her chest, a kind of longing that had no shape. She reached out and, ever so gently, placed her fingertips on its cracked surface. Immediately, visions bloomed behind her eyes. Memories not her own. She saw the guardian star shining brilliantly, surrounded by spirals of cosmic light. She saw its fear, shadows creeping from unfamiliar places, echoing change, unknown paths. And then she felt the moment it chose solitude, the moment it dimmed its light, and she felt its regret. Solara blinked as the vision faded, her hand still resting on the star's surface. "It didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. "It just wanted to protect what it loved." Velin nodded. Even stars are not immune to fear. She stood slowly, heart filled with quiet resolve. Then maybe it doesn't need to stay broken. Velin tilted his head. "And how would you heal a star?" Solara looked up, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the chamber. By helping it forgive itself, by showing it that connection isn't weakness, it's life. For a long moment, the cavern was still. Then, beneath her hand, the broken star pulsed. Once, twice, and a faint thread of light stitched across one of its cracks. A beginning. Velin's voice was low, reverent. "Perhaps, Solara, you are not just a visitor. Perhaps you are the bridge." She met his gaze, her voice steady. "Then let's build what was lost." And behind them, the chamber of memories hummed softly, like a forgotten lullaby finding its voice once more. The days on Lunessa flowed like warm rivers of silk, slow, weightless, and laced with silence that sang. But this day felt different. As the glowing trees bowed gently in the soft morning breeze, Solara and Velin stood atop a wide ridge, where the sky curved so low it seemed to rest just above their shoulders. Before them stretched a shimmering field of starglass, a vast plain scattered with crystalline fragments that caught the light like dew on spider silk. Solara stepped carefully between them, watching as her reflection shimmered in each shard. But these were no ordinary fragments. each one pulsed faintly with constellations, glimpses of the sky as it once was. "This," Velin said, motioning around them, "is the sky mirror. When the comet paths broke, the stars that anchored them shattered here. Each shard holds a piece of what was lost." Solara knelt beside one shard, her fingers tracing a swirling shape of starlight etched across its surface. It almost looked like wings, or maybe petals. "You said there was a constellation that anchored the comet paths. Could it still be here, hidden in these pieces?" Velin nodded slowly. "If we can find the right pattern, we may be able to restore what was broken, but the shape has been forgotten, scattered." Solara closed her eyes. The images returned to her: the broken guardian star, the fading comet trails, the stars blinking like lonely fireflies in the void. Then, a memory, faint but sure, of the vision she saw in the cavern. Among the flashes of sorrow and light, she'd glimpsed something swirling above the guardian, a constellation, radiant and whole. She opened her eyes. "I saw it, in the memory." Velin stepped closer. "Can you draw it?" Solara nodded and pulled her journal from her satchel. Sitting cross-legged in the crystal grass, she began to sketch. Soft curves, radiant lines, 7 points shaped like a spiral unfurling outward. She didn't try to think too much. She let her hand move the way the stars had moved in her mind. When she finished, Velin studied the drawing, his gaze filled with awe. "The spiral of reunion," he whispered. "It was believed to be myth, a constellation said to hold the rhythm of all connected worlds." Solara rose to her feet. "Then we find it in the shards." For hours, they moved through the mirror field, holding her drawing to the light and turning each shard until they found a match. One by one, the points of the spiral began to take shape in the sky above, like the universe remembering itself. And as the 7th shard was placed, a soft ripple passed through the air, and the sky above them shimmered. Slowly, a glowing pattern stitched itself into the heavens. 7 stars, swirling outward in a radiant dance. The spiral of reunion was whole again. A deep hum echoed through Lunessa, and the land responded. The trees pulsing brighter, the winds singing higher, and far above, the faint trace of a comet trail rekindling across the stars. Solara stepped back, her eyes filled with wonder. "It's beautiful." Velin looked to her, his voice touched with emotion. "You remembered what we forgot, not just the shape, but the meaning." Solara turned her gaze skyward. "Then it's time for Lunessa to reach out again." And far beyond the stars, worlds that had long forgotten Lunessa stirred, sensing something gentle and long missing returning to the sky. The night had returned to Lunessa, but it no longer carried the weight of silence. The air shimmered with gentle warmth, and the stars overhead now danced with a quiet joy. The spiral of reunion glowed steadily in the sky, each point a soft promise. But as Solara stood beneath it, a stillness settled in her chest, a gentle, persistent ache. Velin walked beside her along the edge of a quiet lake, where the stars reflected in ripples like floating candles. "The path is awakening," he said, watching the sky. "But something more is needed." Solara nodded. "The stars are speaking again, but they're not complete. Not yet." Velin looked at her, eyes soft with understanding. "Because the wound lies not only in the stars, but here." He touched his chest lightly, over where a heart would be. Lunessa was sealed out of fear, and to heal, it must be reopened not by force, but by forgiveness. Solara felt the truth in his words. The guardian star hadn't shattered because of hatred, but because it had been afraid. Afraid of losing its light, afraid of change, afraid of failing those it tried to protect. She could feel its sorrow still echoing in the sky, like a melody left unfinished. They returned to the ancient clearing where the heart of the comet path still floated, cracked, but now pulsing faintly. Around it, the forest had grown brighter, as if hopeful. The moment had come. Solara stepped forward. She closed her eyes and placed both hands on the fractured sphere. It pulsed under her touch, fragile and expectant. And then she did something simple, something quiet. She forgave. She forgave the fear that broke the stars. She forgave the silence that followed. She forgave the guardian, the path, even herself, for doubting, for fearing, for forgetting. As her heart opened, she felt something shift deep within her, not just in her thoughts, but in her being. A warmth spread through her chest, soft and golden. It wasn't magic in the way she'd imagined it. It was peace. Gentle, steady peace. The heart of the comet path glowed brighter. And then, unexpectedly, the light spread from her. A golden radiance rose from her chest, spiraling outward in threads of stardust and memory. It wove through the air like a slow breath, reaching skyward, touching the stars, and circling the ancient shard of the guardian. It was not a portal made of sky and stone, but of feeling, of love and light, and the will to reconnect. Velin stepped back in awe. "You've become the bridge," he whispered. Above them, the stars stirred. One by one, glowing trails arced across the heavens. Comet paths, long dormant, reawakening. They pulsed gently in spirals, linking distant worlds back to Lunessa, each line a song remembered. The heart cracked fully, but this time, not in breaking. The cracks spread like veins of light, and then, in a single breathless moment, it became whole. not restored to its old self, but remade, stronger, softer, new. Solara's light slowly faded as she opened her eyes. The clearing was glowing now, not just from the stars above, but from the healing that had taken place within. She turned to Velin, her voice soft. It wasn't the portal in the sky that mattered. It was the one here. She placed her hand over her heart. Velin bowed deeply, not just in gratitude, but in recognition. And above them, Lunessa sang, not with words, but with light, pulsing in harmony with the stars that had waited so long to remember. Lunessa glowed with a quiet brilliance. The once muted forests now shimmered with deeper color, and the sky overhead was alive with movement. New comet trails traced elegant arcs between stars, each one a thread weaving Lunessa back into the great celestial tapestry. Solara stood with Velin at the edge of a luminous bluff, gazing at the night sky now adorned with more constellations than she had ever imagined. She could feel it in her bones, in her breath. Something had shifted. The galaxy no longer felt so silent. It felt awake. All of this, she whispered, was waiting for a song to be remembered. Velin smiled. And you sang it, Solara. You brought the first notes back. She turned to him, a quiet tenderness in her eyes. It was never just me. The stars called. The guardian reached out. You guided me. She paused, looking back at the sky. But now, I feel them calling again. Not from Lunessa, but from home. Velin's gaze was calm, knowing. The stars do not call without reason. When it is time to return, the way will be made clear. They walked together one last time through the forest of silver trees, now brimming with soft hums and fluttering lights. The path seemed to light itself as they moved. Along the way, the creatures of Lunessa emerged, delicate beings of stardust and glow, each one nodding silently as she passed. Not as farewell, but as thanks. At the base of the hill where she had first arrived, the starlight gathered once more. But this time, it did not swirl into a sky-bound portal. It unfolded from the earth, blooming like a soft flower, an opening not between worlds, but between moments. Velin offered her a slender crystal, gently pulsing with light. A gift, the memory of this place. Should you ever need to remember, hold it near your heart. Solara took it with reverent hands. Will I be able to return? Velin nodded. Lunessa is part of you now. The bridge you built was never made of stone or light. It was made of who you are, and that cannot be broken. A breeze curled around them, carrying the scent of moon blossoms and warm wind. Solara looked once more to the sky. The spiral of reunion shone above, steady and whole. With one final breath of starlit air, she stepped through the portal. There was no flash, no sound, just a soft exhale of light. And then she was home. She awoke beneath the same hilltop sky, the grass cool beneath her, the stars of Earth twinkling quietly above. But they didn't feel the same. She could sense Lunessa between them now, a soft heartbeat just beyond the veil. Solara stood slowly, the crystal still warm in her hand. Down in the village, lights flickered in windows. Life continued, as it always had. But she had changed. She walked home with the quiet grace of someone who had touched the stars and brought their peace back with her. Solara's return was gentle, like waking from a dream you long to hold on to. The hill, the trees, the whispering wind, all familiar, yet somehow more vivid, more alive. The stars overhead blinked softly, as if in greeting. She walked slowly down the slope toward the village, each step carrying a calm that hadn't been there before. Her small cottage stood just as she left it, wrapped in ivy and moonlight. The telescope sat by her window, quiet and still, its lens pointed toward the heavens. Inside, the scent of lavender and old books lingered in the air, welcoming her home. But something was different now. Solara no longer looked at the stars and wondered if they noticed her. She knew they did. She had stood among them, listened to their quiet ache, and helped them remember their song. And somewhere, far off in that galaxy that few even believed in, Lunessa still shimmered, now no longer silent, but singing. That evening, she lit a small lamp in her window, letting its soft glow spill out onto the path beyond her home. Then she sat by her desk, opened her journal, and began to write. There are places beyond the sky that hold more than stars. There are stories waiting in silence, hearts hidden in the void, and whole worlds that long to be remembered. I know this now, because I've been there. I've seen a world made of stardust, heard the lullaby of comet trails, and forgiven a guardian too afraid to shine. I've walked between fear and peace, and found that the way forward lives in the space between. As she wrote, the crystal from Velin sat beside her, glowing faintly. Some nights it pulsed with warmth, and when it did, she knew Lunessa was near, that perhaps a new bridge was forming to another heart, another listener. Children in the village would sometimes see the light in her window and stop to ask about the stars. Solara would smile, invite them inside, and tell them stories of forests that sang, of silver trees and shimmering lakes, of beings made of light and memory. She never said they were dreams. She didn't have to. Those who listened with their hearts always understood. And though the portal no longer shimmered above the hill, Solara never stopped watching the sky, because she knew the stars remember, and if you listen closely enough, they might whisper your name too.